You're listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Financial Benchmarking for Maximizing Your Children's Book Space and Profitability, a session that was presented at Children's Institute 2022 in Phoenix.
Thank you for coming. This is ABA's Children's Institute session on financial benchmarking for maximizing your children's space and profitability. I'm P.K. Sindwani. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for ABA, but before doing that, I was a bookseller for 29 years. And I had a general bookstore with both children and adult books, but had a huge 40% of my bookstore was children's.
And I'm Cynthia Compton. I own 4Kids Books and Toys in Zionsville, Indiana, which is on the north side of Indianapolis, which we have now had for 19 and a half years, and that half really counts in children's book selling. And this year I opened a second store, which is a general store called MacArthur Books in Carmel, Indiana, which has now been open for a whopping 7 weeks and doing just fine. So it's great to see all of you, and thank you for coming at the end of the day. And feel free to stand if you've been sitting for a long time and you need to get up and move. I completely understand. But we're going to have so much fun. I can't wait to talk to you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we need to start with just a question, just so we get a sense for who's in the room. How many of you are here that work for a general bookstore? Wow, that is incredible and amazing. Okay, and how many of you have a children's only bookstore? And I'm sorry to use the word only with children in the same sentence. Okay, excellent.
That's great.
That is absolutely wonderful. When the planning was done for a Children's Institute this year, one of the main goals, always the main goals, is to provide education that is relevant across all different kinds of bookstores. So seeing this mix in the room is really wonderful. And so is that mood lighting. Holy cow. Yeah. Everybody good? Okay.
I don't know what's playing.
I don't know either. So no necking in the back. And if anybody needs to come up, no, I'm just kidding. You do what you need to do in the back. It's been a long day.
I think the light
might
maybe there's a switch behind.
Switch. Yeah. Those of you that didn't choose to nap might be lulled into a sense of, yeah. When you have to use your phone to turn the light switch, that's not a good idea. Yeah. Amazing. Wow. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to do shadow puppets, everybody. Are you ready? There we go.
There you go. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Well done. Well done. We did need a room monitor after all.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you want to start with this, or do you want me to start with this? You want me to start with this?
Sure.
Okay, absolutely. This is not the slide that I thought we were going to start with, but that's okay.
We'll
go with this.
Yeah.
Now, you go ahead and start, and then I'll jump in on the next one.
Okay, so for preparation for this session, I took a survey of booksellers that I know, and also I talked to Edelweiss, and I said, what percentage of your inventory is children's inventory, unit-wise, space-wise, and what is the correlation with sales and turn? And one of the things I realized is that having a robust children's section is just as important in a general store as it is for children's only bookstore. So one of the things I realized, for example, the price of the book, average mixed inventory between hardcover and paperback is about 13 to 15% lower, the average price from the adult section. And they take less space. The children's books take less space. So if you have same amount of book, and I noticed there are people who have 25%. There was a store that has 25% of their books in children's books had 25% of the sales in children's books. However, the price of the inventory was less because the average price of the inventory is less. So therefore, the turn was actually higher. And the other thing I noticed is, well, actually in general, children's books are about half of adult books. The other nationwide, 13% less versus, and the other thing, there are few stores who have either cross-merchandise young adult books or have young adult section, which is very close to the adult section. Ever since they've done that, they've seen an 8 to 9% increase in young adult book section. So just we wanted to emphasize how important it is to not only allocate your resources where it does make sense, financial sense, to have a robust children's section.
Can I interrupt you for just a quick second? As you think about your stores, since we have so many general stores in the room, as we think about your stores, how many people would say that they have 25% or less of their space for children? And how many would say that it's more like 30%? Yeah, which is more typical.
Yeah.
The decision to where you place young adult, does anybody have their young adult in their children's department anymore? A few stores do, just because of the way your store is laid out. And then how many have moved it out into the general floor? Yeah, a more common crossover sale. I want to back up just a little bit because PK talked a lot about looking at better turn. Turn is probably the first benchmark that we really want to talk about today in financial benchmarks. And understanding turn by section, understanding turn particularly in children's by subsection, meaning board books, picture books, early readers, middle grade, YA, is critical to understanding the amount of square feet that you need to apply. And if you're talking about 30% of your store, that is a significant amount of real estate that needs to turn and pay for itself. Turn, as you know, is simply the amount of times an item sells in a given year. It's a very easy math problem. You do it on the back of a napkin. And you can do it by shelf space. You can do it by section. You can do it by square actual foot. I can tell you the turn of the 2 feet of the top of my board book section for a month, a season, and a year. And frankly, I'm kind of weird because I like to look at that. But keeping in mind that generating higher and higher turn brings more money down to the bottom line, irregardless of price point. So we're always looking to increase those areas. I like to use a garden analogy in that you water the plants that are growing continually. You need to keep giving them more space for their roots, for their leaves, for them to expand. So knowing those turn points is exactly why it's important to say that children's books more than pay for themselves in sales, taking up proportionally less space. But what space are we giving them, and do they need more if the turn is higher? Is everybody comfortable with turn and looking at it? And how small do you look at turn? I mean, everybody looks at turn in their whole store, right? Who looks at turn by adult versus kids?
Yeah.
Who looks at turn within kids by subsection? YA, middle grade, okay. Who looks at turn within smaller than subsection by actual shelf? Oh God, I love you.
That's
so great. That is so great. That is one of the first key benchmarks that we want to talk about today, and continuing to focus in on that and allowing your store to shift to maximize profitability and allow more money to drop to the bottom line constantly. And good news, it's one of the easiest pieces of arithmetic that you can do in your store on any given day. Okay, I interrupted.
No.
Go on.
That was, you said it very well. And here we're just sharing some stats, from General Bookstore, how children's books stack up to adult paperbacks, and you see it's more than half. Cynthia already talked about the turns. turns by section, turns by shelf, turns by square feet, all of those data. And this is the source where we got these from. Okay.
I'm sure that everybody was in the MBD session this morning and saw the growth categories. So those need to now be overlaid over this data. But as you were noting the areas that took the greatest growth, it's really important to look at those top line numbers because let's face it, Costco is in those numbers. Those may not necessarily be relevant to us. And overlay our own data onto that and then see how we compare. For me this morning, the biggest aha was that I have room to create more space for licensed product, which I have been really pretty strict with the staff about to this point, not sure that it was going to support that continued growth. Clearly it is supporting that continued growth, and I need to make some shifts there quickly. Turns in a children's department not only are more rapid than they are in an adult department, but the number of items sold per transaction, which is another benchmark that everybody needs to take, is higher in children's sales than it is in adults. Does everybody track average number of transactions? I mean, it's a pretty easy number to track, right? Do you find that that data follows for you? Yeah, it does for us as well. Again, more items, smaller margin, but larger cumulative margins, faster turn, more money to the bottom line. So number of items per transaction is the second financial benchmark that we talk about after turn that's critical to go back and look at. And if you're really super geeky, see Cynthia smile here. If you're really super geeky, you can analyze what departments have the most multiple sales per sale. So for example, are people more likely to buy several middle grade books together in your store? Are they likely to buy several graphic novels together in your store? Or is it the board book section that generates multiple copies per transaction? And are you feeding those areas with enough space so that there is enough product out on the shelf to support that turn of the multiple item sales? Did that make sense, or am I going really down the geek rabbit hole now? Okay,
yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah. For the purposes of this conversation, I am not. However, we all know that sidelines sell alongside books, have a greater profit margin, and depending on how you sell them and how you price market, bring more money in profit to the bottom line. So yeah, it makes a difference to me how many items per sale. Does it include sidelines or not, and what those sideline categories are. Absolutely. And everybody sells sidelines, right? Well, looking around the room, I don't see anybody that doesn't. So absolutely. So making those adjustments not only allows the data to change the amount of space per allocation, but also what you're marketing. Going back to my a little bit tired gardening example, we water what's growing, right? So we market what's selling, we market what's moving. That is your marketing dollars and also your front shelf space, because that's what's working. That's what drives everything else. The other key benchmark, do you want to talk about staffing, or can I keep going on that? Okay. So the other key benchmark that we want to talk about is using that data, using that turn and that transactional data overlaid on time of day to advise your staffing. Are we staffing the floor at the time with the most sales? Are we making the most money or the most use of our staff on the floor during those times when we are making the most transactions? And if we are not, what could we be doing with those staff that is more profitable? I'm not saying cut staff hours, but does it make more sense that perhaps some of that staff is working off the floor or even off site remotely to do other tasks versus being on the floor? But payroll is directly tied to when our sales happen and how our sales happen. And are we looking at that so that we have A, enough people on the floor when we're busy, but B, we don't have too many people on the floor when we're not. There is nothing that turns a Wednesday into a never-ending day, like 4 staffers on the floor and no customers, right? Right. Thank you. Go ahead. You want to talk about more
No.
benchmarks?
No, I wanted to go over the next thing. Yeah. Returning customers. Does anybody track what percentage of sales are from returning customers? Yeah. And I've seen the benchmark. There's 70 to 80% of the sale is from repeat customers. And special orders versus shelf sales. Now, special orders are very important part of the business. So it's keeping track of, are you stocking the right inventory? Are you looking at the special order? Are you keeping track if there are more than one time some book has been special ordered? Maybe it's worth stocking it the next time. Number of items per ticket. Has anybody taken a data of how many times somebody comes into the store, comes in for children's book, but ends up buying adult books, or vice versa?
And one way to look at that, one way to capture that would be how many of your special orders by department are then accompanied by a sale of an additional item. Would be one just really quick trigger to look at that. By the way, I'm just going to drop a quick asterisk in there, and this has really nothing to do with the financial workshop today, but we gave up using the term special order in our store about 10 years ago. We now simply say we're going to bring it from the warehouse.
Yes.
The warehouse is owned by Ingram.
But
we do, because, and part of that is because our stores are in the Midwest. And I'm going to make a blatant generalization here and tell you that Midwestern customers don't want you to go to any trouble. So it feels awkward for them when they say, do you have, thank you, Mary, do you have this in stock? And we say, oh, no, I'm so sorry, we don't have that, but we can get that for you. Oh, no, don't go to any trouble. I'll just, and you know the end of that sentence. Their phone is already out, right? So we literally 10 years ago banished the term special order, and we simply bring all items from the warehouse. Yes. Some things take longer to find in the warehouse.
Yeah, we have it at the warehouse.
Yes, we have it at the warehouse. So I'll just drop that in for your notes in case that's helpful to you, but yeah, XNAM special order. However, tracking the data on your special orders is brilliant because not only are you're finding this opportunity in your own inventory, you're figuring out who those regular customers are that are not only willing to come to you, but come to you, risk the fact that you don't have it on the shelf, and come back. You just got 2 visits out of them. Life is good. You can't sell them something in 2 visits. I mean, come on. I'm sorry, you were talking about number of items per ticket and transactions per hour by staff. How many transactions by hour without pointing any fingers, and who was working? It makes a difference. Not that more transactions makes a better employee. It does not. But some people do better in that very fast-paced environment of lots of things going on at the same time. That is not the best use of all of our team's time. One of my team members, and she would confess this immediately, can't get anything else done if there's a bunch of customer transactions. Another one of my team members thrives on that pivot from one thing to the next. Consequently, I know who's working Saturday morning. We call them paper cut Saturdays in a kid's store because everything's going out the door as a birthday present and getting wrapped. But she gets so much done on Wednesday afternoons when it's infinitely slower and she doesn't have to change back and forth in tasks. So transactions per hour, level of staff that's on the store. Clearly, I want more experienced staff who can answer a lot of questions at once when we're super busy. That's a much better use of their hourly time from payroll and also from customer satisfaction ratings. So that's another benchmark. We just gave you 4 more. You're just going to go home and be in a data frenzy, aren't you?
Okay.
Okay, customer bookstore doorbell dings. I will tell you that this is a little aspirational for me. In pre-pandemic, we were actually tracking number of entrances, number of bodies walking into our store, number of sales per day. We had a daily total that went on the bottom of our daily cash out report, which said this many times the door is open, this many transactions per day. And we looked at that. That became less relevant, obviously, during the pandemic, because the only people that were going in and out of the door were me loading my minivan, going off to make deliveries or doing whatever. It's becoming more relevant again. And so I guess I just want to sort of throw that out as another benchmark. Is anybody tracking right now their traffic versus transactions? Would it appeal to you? Yes. Okay, so there are doorbell counters. It's really simple. You literally pop it up on your door, and it's sort of like the people counters that they use when they let people into rides or into concerts, but it's literally just clicks. Every time that door goes ding and it opens, it clicks the number of times the door is open and shut. It's not completely accurate, of course, because your UPS driver is going to come in 3 or 4 times. And then there's always that 3-year-old boy that thinks it's just hysterical to stand there and open the door and have his mom forget, don't go outside. Yeah, there's that. But you can still globally get a sense for how many folks are coming in and how many transactions per day. And then look at that number. And they're super inexpensive little counter daily whoppers that you can go down and see the guys at the hardware store and just like make that thing with your hand and they'll show you where it is. It's really easy. So is anybody tracking it now or intrigued in looking at that? You're tracking it?
Yeah.
Has it been helpful? Okay. Yes, agreed. Excellent.
And do you ever track sales, like foot traffic to how much does that convert into actual transaction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So it's close rate, right? It's the benchmark of close rate. It's how many sales are we closing versus how many people come into the store. We have used it more effectively. And again, this is not current history. This is pre-pandemic history. We have used it more effectively in fourth quarter. As a way to say how many people are we able to get to and help that are clearly coming in to buy. Because if you're coming into a children's store in November and December, you intend to walk out with a package. So how many people are we able to help? Do we have enough staff on the floor to help them? Does that number start to drift down a little bit? Meaning we got too many door dings and not enough sales. Do we have enough staff on the floor? But also it became, I'm just going to kindly say game for the staff when we all know it was just my need for data analysis to say, how does this Saturday compare to last Saturday? And how did it compare to this Saturday in November of last year? How are we doing on that scorekeeping thing? And I will also just share with you, nobody's ever going to want to work in our stores. I will share with you that we set goals for that and created financial incentives with the increase for the staff. So I'll throw that out there as an option, as a way to share that daily support. Yes. So very easily, simply the doorbell dings the number of times the door was open and someone came into the store versus the number of transactions in the day. No, we would physically enter it in our daily sales totals. So our daily sales totals on our POS system allow us to add a couple more fields of data. We add the temperature. We add, and it's never done me any good whatsoever, but I read very early on in my retail career that you should track the temperature and your sales, and I've done it ever since. And don't ask me what I'm going to do with it, but there it is. If you want to know what it was in April of 1997, I got you. But we do track that, just that basic number on those fields. And then we just go back and look and say, okay, on the first Saturday of November last year, we did this amount. We had this many people come in the door. We had this level of a close rate. Let's set a goal for this. And the difference is the staff incentive cash. I don't.
I think there are doorbells that, like you have this thing when you enter it.
Like a laser?
Yeah, like a laser.
Ooh.
But there are ones that can count as well at the same time. Same thing, exceptions, UPS. The other thing, we do used to use this stat for staffing next year.
Right.
And so it's good to take notes. Well, this day was snowing, but next year, next thing you know, you have only one person on the floor thinking, this day traditionally is very slow. Why is it slow? I used to use that as a benchmark for staffing next year or budgeting.
It also obviously impacts your ordering and when things hit the door and when you have time to receive them and when physically when that labor can take place. For example, in a children's store, the day after Halloween is dead. It just is. You should time your shipments to come in on November 1st. Just think about it. Yeah. See, I'm just wrong. Yeah. So smart.
Candy exchange.
So smart.
That's a great idea. You should be here.
Forget the shipments on November 1st.
Candy.
I love it. Okay.
That's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we've talked about a number of different benchmarks today, and it's very easy to go home and say, we got to measure this, we got to measure this, we got to measure this. My suggestion is always to pick 3. It's sort of like the advice that we give to new stores when we're trying to get them to move from buying from a distributor to buying direct with publishers. And we say, pick one publisher that you think you're going to buy a lot from and buy direct from them, and do that for 6 months, and then add a second publisher and make that move over, because that drops more money to your bottom line. It's like that with data variables. I think we pick 2 to 3 that we know that our systems are already in place to measure, or that wouldn't be expensive to add, like the doorbell ding or the whatever else. And you measure those 2 to 3 variables for a period. It'd be lovely to say, let's measure them for a year, but that feels too long to me. I think you measure it for a quarter. And then you look at that data and say, did I learn anything here? Is there anything surprising here? What changes can I make to improve that for the next quarter? Along the way, no matter what quarter you start in, your second quarter is going to be better, because that's how children's book selling works. It's an every other quarter kind of business. You're going to improve. So I strongly suggest pick 2 or 3 that are appealing, that you can put into place or do pretty easily without a lot of extra equipment. Measure those and then work and then tweak them and then pull. Yes. Obviously, fourth quarter in our business is extremely strong. For many of our stores that are that are in parts of the country that have seasons, second quarter is also a very strong quarter, because Easter often falls in it, which is second Christmas. It's also very often, depending on when your schools get out, the beginning of your summer reading program. Now, I know for you East Coasters, that's not relevant because you're like still flipping in school. Yeah. But for the rest of us, we need our kids out by Memorial Day. So we have a big second quarter and a big fourth quarter. And that kind of tracks across our industry. So no matter when you start, it's going to be different. Now, some of you run incredible businesses that are just straight up strong 4 quarters of the year, and I have so much to learn from you. But in the meantime, I want the rest of us to pick up our chins and say, if this quarter's sucky, it's because next quarter's going to be great. That's just how it goes. We did that one. Thank you.
Am I not going back?
No, we're celebrating. We're celebrating. So capturing the data does two things. One, it just makes me sleep at night knowing that all of these people are out there measuring all of these little data points. And it just, let's face it, it's all about my personal happiness. But capturing the data allows you to change things. It makes us less dependent on the vagaries of the market, the weather, our publisher partners, the supply chain. When we own our data, we can change things in our businesses that we have control over. That's the best part of Bookstore Math. That's the fun part. That's why you're the smartest people at the conference, because you came to this session, because we're having the most fun. This is the part that's really fun. Not like the plugging all the numbers into the spreadsheets, but the analyzing the parts that work and expanding those fields and looking at the parts that aren't working and figuring out either how to help them or just flip and get rid of them. I mean, let's face it, if you can't sell YA, you can't sell YA. Move on. You can sell YA.
You can sell. And you can sell board books.
That was a really bad example. Take that out of the tape. I'm never going to be invited to another dinner. But my point being that this is why measuring the benchmarks, finding a couple that you can work with, and literally analyzing them down to a very small amount is so incredibly positive and fun, because we can move those. We can move data we understand. So, in order to understand your data, what do you need to participate in?
There you go. ABACUS.
No true confession time, but does anybody not know what ABACUS is or has forgotten because of pandemic, and we'll just talk about it for a minute? There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Do the commercial.
ABACUS is a financial benchmark where you can compare your store with your peer group. And there are several ways of that data is sliced. With your region, with your people, your square feet, turns, your people nationwide, people within the, say, sales level between $300,000, $500,000, $1 million. So many ways to slice the information. And also, sales is one category. Expenses. Are you spending? Are you paying? Is your rent higher than what it should be? Is your payroll more than what a traditional bookstore? And are you spending more money on supplies? This gives you guidelines to measure your success compared to somebody who's in a similar situation. So that is ABACUS, which, by the way, opened up last week. I hope you all got the email.
If you have the ABACUS email and you open it and it seems overwhelming or unfamiliar, because let's face it, some of us didn't participate in the last couple of years because we were doing the best we could. There is plenty of help to get that data and get it filled out. PK's office and his staff will help you. There are other stores that will help you. Call me. I will find you someone to help you get that numbers plugged in. We need participation in ABACUS because the rest of us need enough data points to have it be relevant to measure our data against. We all benefit when lots and lots of people participate. If you are going to renegotiate your lease with your landlord, if you are going for a line of credit at your financial institution, if you are looking at any purchases, buying a building, doing anything that you're doing, you need to have some data to explain to non-bookstore people how you fit into the market and what you're doing well and where you need help. ABACUS does that for you. If we have enough data that it's actually a relevant worksheet that people have said, this many booksellers participated in that, and look at this, you're charging me more rent than the average bookstore plus 20%, which I am absolutely paying more rent than the average bookstore plus 20%. It also, though, allows you to look at and make conscious decisions. It's not judgy by saying, well, I'm obviously paying too much rent or I'm paying too much payroll. You're choosing to do that. There's a reason why. Where else can you make up that money in your business organization to have that drop down to the bottom? And what are you getting paid? And how are you getting paid? You need to know that data. So if you need help with ABACUS, we will help you. PK will help you. He lives for this. But we will absolutely help you because we desperately need everyone to participate. It does not matter if you have not been in business for a full year. It does not matter if you were shut down part of last year. None of it matters. Put the numbers in. Put as many numbers in as you have, and it'll go forward. Was that enough of a plea? I really need everybody to do it.
And I just want to add that it is compiled by an outside source, so we don't see. So industry inside is also there. So if you feel more comfortable letting the third party, they will also help you.
They will coach you through plugging in your formula, plugging in your numbers and making it all work. And then the report that you get back will be an overview of everybody's results and then how your store specifically compares to all of those aggregates. And it is so incredibly helpful. So everybody's going to go do that right when they get home, right?
I have had so many stores during COVID that ABACUS helped them negotiate their lease rent with the landlords because they also understand, how it is comparing to other and what impact COVID has. So please, thank you. All right.
Questions, discussions, conversations. What benchmarks are working for you? What else do you want to know? Otherwise, I'll natter on. Go ahead. Absolutely. The number. Anthology.
IBIT used to do the same thing. Sorry to interrupt.
Exactly.
Yeah, I used IBIT and I used to be able to get that data.
Right. I take the actual section, so purchases are inventory per section, divide it by square feet of that section, so I get inventory by linear foot. I then measure turn based on sales, and that's how I get the number per square foot. Now, I can be, because in my children's store, not so much my general store yet, because we're still sort of figuring it all out, but in my children's store, because our departments have physically been in the same places for a long time, I can tell you the difference between the top shelf of my board books and the third shelf of my board books. Like, isn't that scary? Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah. Uh-huh. Go ahead. Yeah. Face-offs. First of all, the ones that are doing well can do better. So I order deeper and I put more face-offs in them. Eye level, height from the floor. This is another benchmark. Now we're getting into the true geekiness. But height from the floor makes a huge difference. And there's a sweet spot in our store by section. There is a sweet spot in our store overall, but there's a sweet spot by section. And so moving that, we have a fondness for the alphabet in the book selling industry that borders on the pathological. Most people who buy board books, I'm about to get myself in so much trouble. Most people who buy board books do not look for them alphabetically by author's last name. Just saying.
Then how do you then remind books up? How do you find books when someone asks for it?
Experience, shelf talkers, displays, sidelines in your board book section to highlight, like, do you have your Boynton plush next to your Boynton books? And if you don't, why don't you? Like, there are so many ways to give yourself visual cues for some of that. I'm not telling you to go home and blow up your board book section. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that if your best-selling board books are on your bottom shelf, you got some explaining to do. Go ahead. I know you had a good comment to make about that. Thank you. Right.
And there was, what happens if we need to find one? Well, 99 times out of 100, it's parent browse for the book. And 1 time out of 100, that you're actually having to go search for the one title. But I think that the face out, instead of having 200 different titles on top of each of the board book, have 4
And those 40 titles should be your best turning titles. We also, as children's booksellers, have an incredible fascination with pretending to be libraries.
Yeah. And carrying everything.
And we want to carry everything because we've forgotten that we can get almost anything from the warehouse. Yeah.
I wonder whether some people, the treatment of the book and the rest of the like itself, like moving.
Yes.
So I say about sellers table. We're going to say about sellers because they're on the sellers table.
Mm-hmm.
And like outward facing, inward facing.
Mm-hmm.
The books are considered chance to go outward facing. You would never have a chance driving there. So how do you work that?
That is the magic and art and the absolute joy that we have as indie booksellers, because our staff recommends are as strong as bestsellers. I mean, let's face it, they're getting the bestseller at flipping Target. What they come to us for is the staff recommends. We own that. We have so much credibility there, and we have so much marketing power with staff recommends. So that to me is, I love your bestseller table. I would suggest you put a staff recommends table next to it and then benchmark the hell out of it. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Does anybody have a favorite vendor? Because everybody does something different.
Shelfless, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Go ahead.
We do a really different thing. We were inspired by a store tour at the Green in Portland.
Yep, great store.
And they had funky shelf toppers everywhere that were super arty. And we're like, let's do that. So we all make our own in our individual bookstore. It's a playful environment. So it doesn't work with everybody. But you got a streamline, modern thing going on. I feel like having, reproducible to be. We do a lot of cut work, we put some glitter on and color on, and some of them are basic. We talk to people like they have to be small enough to hold the books off. And we got these black trees on and they really have a lot of space. So we recycle cardboard mailer, like anything that's firm cardstock.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's super cool.
That's cool.
Go ahead. Oh, fun. Oh, it's like a, yeah. That's cool. Your hands up. That's cool. So we have another data point that we're tracking in our store this summer because we are back in having a full-fledged summer reading program again post-COVID. We ran it during COVID, but all of our rewards were picked up at the curb, so the kids weren't coming into the store necessarily. This summer, they're back to coming into the store every Wednesday for their to give their little summer reading summaries and to get their prizes. And one of the options for kids is to write a little book review, which we then turn into a shelf talker. So we just laminate that sucker and stick it right there on the shelf. Our staff is required to do 2 shelf talkers per shift. So every time you work, you got to write 2 shelf talkers. And it's in their little to-do folder. Everybody has a little folder in the drawer under the register. And when you come in, you look in your folder and there's like a little love note from me and like that thing I borrowed from you last week and notes about something, you know, or that piece of that arc that came in specifically for you. It's all in your folder. And also 2 blank shelf talkers because you're going to do those on your shift. So long story to say that the data point that we are tracking this summer is what's the turn on items that have a kid's shelf talker versus a staff shelf talker. So stay tuned. I'll tell you the next time I see you. But what the turn is on those books. We literally we have a spreadsheet of the books that have kids shelf talkers on them. And we're just doing a side-by-side sales analysis as a monthly report. Yeah.
You know, there's something else. I know my system used to have this category called just line miscellaneous.
Right.
And you can just put your notes in there and then you can sort it by your notes.
Right.
So you really don't even have to make.
Yeah, I could use a field and put kids in it. That would be like super smart. But I also have a staffer that lives for spreadsheets. So she thinks this is so fun. Anyway. Yes. I put non-book on them. I put high traffic, non-browse things on them. Examples, high traffic, non-browse. Things that you're going to sell that people are going to come in specifically for they're going to literally come up in front. For us, it's the prep manuals for the Catholic high school entrance exams. We have 6 Catholic high schools around our area. You have to take this test when you're an 8th grader. Everybody comes and buys the little prep manual for it. That doesn't need good real estate, right? That's milk, bread, and eggs in a grocery store. That can just go where it goes.
Or SAT prep.
SAT prep books, if you still sell. Does anybody still sell those? People do that online. I don't know. But that kind of thing. That's what we do with dead shelves. And then you put hot non-book. So hot sideline items that kids are going to come in and ask for, which for the last year has been fidgets. It is no more, but you know, that's been there. Yeah, go ahead. Right. Mm-hmm. Um, 90 days. And I'm just pulling that number down because I think quarterly analysis is just really helpful. I also think that you should pick like 5 to 10 things that you are absolutely tracking every day that you know you can accomplish in 5 to 10 days and track that data. Look at it for 90 days or let it sit for 90 days and then look at it and see what's helpful to you and what's not. And then adjust. My hunch is that those 5 to 10 items you're going to tweak and probably add 3 and take off 4. But breathe with it for a minute. Yeah, let your store love you. You got to let your business love you. You got to get out of the way and let it love you for a minute. So let that happen. Yeah, but I love the fact that you want to dig into that data right now. And if you want to come up after and show me what you got so far, I'll do that too. Yeah. But it takes a while for your customer base to find you. So you haven't even seen everybody yet that's going to be your best 100 customers. So, other advice for her since I just jumped over there? All right.
Go ahead.
No, but I'll share it with you. Drop in your business card and it's like super, super easy. You sign up for our summer reading program during the month of May by buying 1 book per child. That's the only thing you have to buy. You are then in for the rest of the summer. You come in every Wednesday. You bring us a picture you drew about the book a Lego model that we can take a picture of, a book summary, a rap that you've written, or we'll just interview you about the book and you get a prize. So in the month of May, we sell between 1,800 and 2,100 books just with enrollments. I buy in April for that. It's just this big boost. Then all of those people, now only a third come in every given week on Wednesdays to get their prizes because camp and vacation and, stuff. So a third come in once a week. Out of that third, half of those people make another purchase when they come in for their prizes. Are we doing the math with me here?
Yeah.
Okay. They are things I have bought all year long. So we've been doing this summer reading program now for a lot of years. So I have built up some skills with looking for end of season clearance things and nonsense things. They are all items that I pay like literally pennies for. When I run out or I get weird age groups, like we have adults that join our summer reading program to read alongside their children, for example, or we'll have like grandparents that'll join and want to read the same book with their grandkids as a way to have a communication. And I have to have prizes for the grown-ups too. So they just get book bucks for the store. They just get coupons or whatever, which doesn't cost me anything until they redeem it. And in which case the margin's going to be great. So I don't care. But so that's it. So you're welcome to give me your card, but that was it. Somebody hit the light switch. That's fine. But that was our summer reading program. Boom. Done. Easy.
The other thing I used to do is I used to partner up with schools and say, look, whichever school comes in, we will contribute 10%
right
towards their library. So which doesn't add up to 10% for you because, 10% of retail is 10%. No, it comes to 5% of your actual.
Or 6%.
Yeah, 5 or 6%, depending on where you go. So that's another incentive. So I noticed that a lot of schools will give out the coupons on your behalf. And that was a big, especially in the beginning when they have to buy their summer reading books. That used to add up.
Other questions or thoughts? I do want to thank you so much for your kind attention at the end of a very long, very data-filled day. I love to talk about numbers, and I love to call PK and ask him about number things. So it's an open invitation to continue this conversation as long or as often as you would like to do so. And everybody's going to go home, and the first thing that they're going to do is complete their ABACUS.
Oh, and please also, there's a self-evaluation on your app.
Oh yeah, we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to evaluate this on the app, right? Which is a benchmark point that we are evaluating against.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your participation. Thank you all so much.
No, there's a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got another question?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's one of those envelopes with the foldy over the top thing and the little stringy thing. And there's one for every employee, and they're pretty colors because it's my store. And that's where we put some of our employees still get paper paychecks. So the people that get paid paper paychecks, their check goes in there. A copy of any staff communication, like my weekly little, here's things I need you to know, or event flyers or stuff like that. Notes from me. If they get a positive comment from a customer, or we get a customer review during a time that I know they were working, like a 5-star Google thing, I print it, I write a note on it, and I put it in their folder. All of that. It's our employee communication tool. That's all it is. And it came in the mail. It can go right in there, and it's those accordion ones that are fat. So their stuff. It's their mailbox. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, very low tech. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Bookstore Education Podcast, brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!